Welcome back, Global War 1939. We are going to take a second look at the German opening strategy. There's been a couple changes to the rules, slight ones, not that big, nothing that's really going to affect Germany's opening round. But certainly there's been some setup changes to the map. So we want to give you a strategy reflective of that. Also, just my own, and the secondary part of it is just my own thought process on how to conduct this turn. The previous one wasn't as efficient as it possibly could be. So I want to give you an update on that as well. So before we do anything, Germany's unique in their opening turn that they have what's called Blitzkrieg in the rulebook. Basically gives them 2 turns back to back, giving every piece an opportunity to move and attack twice. So it'll break down as declaration of war, purchase new units, declare combat, move all your pieces, conduct your combat, non-combat phase, place your new units that you just purchased, and then do the combat moves, conduct combat, non-combat again. So you're not going to get a second purchase, unfortunately. You're just going to get the one. Now, the downside of not getting a second purchase is that typically, after, like most turns, you'll do all your turns and then reinforce wherever your production facilities are with your new purchase. Because Germany buys or places their purchase after the first impulse, at the end of the second impulse, most of your factories are probably going to be vacant. So you want to keep that in mind for counterattack by the British from this sea zone into Western Germany. So you want to leave some kind of garrison behind to prevent that. The British do have a transport here that they start with. They have the potential of picking up a third one. So these sea zones 23 and 14 are going to be targets for our Navy. And the whole purpose, you don't want this Navy to link up because it gets pretty powerful. Get 2 battleships, a carrier, some support vessels. But our primary target is the transports, and we can't kill the transports until we kill everything else because they have to be the last hit. And we want those transports to prevent any kind of landing into Western Germany on Britain's first turn. Because if they see the opportunity and if you leave it vacant, of course they're going to land. And now you're going to counterattack, kick them out of there, but then you're because of both of those attacks, you're going to lose that major production facility, and that'll put a huge hindrance on your ability to raise armies, especially later on in the game. If the Allies decide to land in France, you're going to want that production facility of 10. All right, so let's take a look at your purchases. So what I would recommend, you do start the game with $52. What I would highly recommend is a purchase of some variation of armor. So I got 4 medium tanks and 2 tank destroyers. You can go with all 6 tanks. Doesn't really matter. I do like the 2 tank destroyers because they do hit on a 7 or less versus the 6 or less with the tanks. Now, their defense is not that great. The medium tanks' defense is much better, but they do cost all the same. 1 mech, 2 artillery, and an airborne. Now, I'm not recommending these pieces just because they all have a destination in mind. They all have a function and a purpose. The mech artillery, you want that in Normandy. The French only got 1 infantry there, so you want to take that out and capture that territory. The second artillery is going into Denmark on the second impulse to take that territory out. All your armor, that is slated to go into Paris, and anything left over from the Reims battle on the first impulse, by purchasing these 6 armor units, you're guaranteeing that Paris will fall. Maybe on a worst case scenario on a second round of combat, and then Paris will be under your control. And you want the airborne. You're only allowed 3. You start with 2, and you want that airborne to give you some flexibility up in Scandinavia. So these guys up here, even though they only have 2 infantry units, there's only so much material you can get in Scandinavia. You can only get 4 units up there. Now, you do have a couple bombardment options, which is great, but the Oslo battle is the scary one. Because of that fort, all your units are getting a -1, or any units offloading from the transport are getting a -1. And they're rolling 3 dice back at you at 5, so things can go pretty awry pretty quickly up there. And if they do happen, and I've seen it, that you lose 3 units, it makes taking out the second territory, which is critical to getting a bonus at the end of the first round. You need this territory. You need both of them. But if you lose too much here, it makes this one very difficult. So that's why you get the 3rd airborne, just to give you some peace of mind, some flexibility. Now, if everything goes well for you and you don't lose anything at all, which is perfect, then this territory up here should fall. And then that gives you that airborne, some flexibility, perhaps going to Yugoslavia battle in the second impulse, going to the Paris battle, which you don't really need. But it gives you some flexibility to go other places. And if you just get an artillery or another mech, then you're not going to be able to get a unit or a 50 unit up in Scandinavia or in Norway, right? Now, from here, I'll just give you a turn 2 recommendation. You don't have to. But turn 2 is going to be the richest that you're ever going to be, because you're collecting $20 from the French once you take Paris. That's the richest you'll be up until you start waging war in the Soviet Union. So you want to purchase anything that you normally wouldn't now. So every turn from the rest of the game up until turn 15, I highly recommend buying 5 infantry, 2 Mark IVs, 2 SS mechs, and 1 SS infantry. This right here will come to 25. You're only allowed to purchase two of these, and 1 of these per round. So get these out. These are great backbone units. You want as many of these on the map as you can. Certainly, as Germany, you're going to feel a poverty of infantry, especially once you go into Russia, because you have to garrison every territory. You can't leave territories empty in the Soviet Union. So you're going to feel a big poverty of infantry. So knocking out a minimum 5 around will pay dividends later on in the game. And I would, on the turn 2 purchase, I would recommend getting the 3 heavy artillery. You're only allowed 3, and then you're going to place them in these 3 factories once you activate these countries. And the reason for it is it's all about Moscow. So you place 1 in each, or you put all 3 in Romania. Doesn't matter. But if you put them in here, you turn 3, then you're going to move them here, and then you're going to use them, because turn 4 you're attacking the Soviet Union. So you want them as early as possible to be in position in Romania. You can wait till turn 3, then put them all in Romania, and then go into the assault. But they're expensive. Buying all 3s, $18. They're 6 each, and you want take advantage of the fact that you're going to have a lot of money on round 2, and then that will roughly give you anywhere between $30 to $40 on round 2 to spend on whatever you wish. For the remainder of your cash up until turn 6, I would highly recommend buy nothing but army units. Forget about your navy. More likely at the beginning of turn 2, you're not going to have a navy left. Air Force is great, but you really need ground forces, infantry, tanks, to go and capture, or for your invasion into the Soviet Union. So for the first 6 turns, I recommend buying nothing but army-based units, infantry, tanks, artillery. Buy those core units, and then you should be fine. Okay, so now for the actual strategy, what are we going to do about all these territories? There's certainly a lot on the map that you do need to capture, annex, activate onto your side. So your turn one priority is to clean up Europe, clean up Western Europe, activate all your allies, Yugoslavia. Don't worry about Greece. That's the Italians' job to take care of Greece, so you don't have to worry about that. Get rid of the British Navy, take out Oslo, Narvik, Denmark, invade Poland. So there's a lot going on. And then your turn two and turn three, your priority. You shouldn't, if you do this correctly and well, you shouldn't have zero battles going on turn two and three. That is repositioning, build up, buying as much units as you can, get them into position for your turn four assault into the Soviet Union. By that time, with the Russian rolls of their economy, they're probably getting close to their 48 anyways. You could hold off until turn five, but turn four, go in, because your path to Moscow is Western Ukraine, turn four, Olarkursk, turn five, Moscow. And then you're up in the north, you're going to use your Finnish army that you activate. You're going to obviously place more units as the game goes on. But this is more a distraction, or hopefully the Soviet player is going to fall into your trap as a distraction to pull units away from down south, and this is where your main assault is going to come from. Okay, so like I was saying before, you do have two attacks, and you want to be careful where you're going, when you're going. My recommendation so the countries you're going to declare war on is France, Holland, Denmark, Norway, Poland, Yugoslavia. By declaring war on France, you're also declaring war on Great Britain. And then you're going to activate Finland, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria all on turn one. So that is all your tasks that you have to do. You only have so many units. It's all possible. It's all doable. And you should have a sizable army left. Your casualties, anywhere between 15 infantry, possibly 20 infantry. So your infantry corps is definitely going to take a hit. But you shouldn't be taking any losses on anything but infantry. And so that's why in every purchase from now on, you're going to want to get a minimum 5, possibly even 10 infantry, because you will feel that poverty later on in the game. Now, you don't really have to worry too much about infantry losses on turn 1, because once you activate your allies, you're going to get 12 infantry units from these 3 territories. You're also going to get 3 artillery and a fighter. Up in Finland, you're going to get another 10 infantry, a fighter, artillery. So this should replace your losses, and they're in position to go against the Soviet Union. So they're not. It's not like you have to spend time trying to get them in position. They're already there. Now, a little side note is that these 3 nations here cannot move. Their units can't do anything, move, attack, until both Yugoslavia and Greece are under Axis control. So that's why you want to go in here in turn 1. The Italians will go into Greece, and then these all these infantry artillery are free to move on turn 2. All right, so for your Impulse 1 attacks, the territories they're going into, is going to be 4 of them. Is going into Holland, Reims, Oslo, West Poland. Which, if you go into these 4 territories on Impulse 1, combined with your non-combat moves and your purchase, on your second impulse, you're going to go into Normandy, Denmark, Paris, Warsaw, Yugoslavia, Narvik, to finish out your turn, and then, of course, do another non-combat move. So for the Holland battle, now, when I'm conducting this, to know what units I need in which territory, because you don't want to put too much into one territory and overkill it, and then you don't have enough material for another territory to capture, and you're struggling to take it, and you're taking more losses than what you need. So I'm going to use low luck to determine what I need where, and the maximum I want in combat rounds is 2. If any of these battles go past 2 combat rounds, it's not going well. So for Holland, I'm going to want a bomber, 2 infantry, 3 mechs, and a veteran fighter. This should give you a combat attack power of 25. So you should guarantee 2 hits with a very small chance of a third hit. This will, because of their starting units, they have 3 infantry artillery. That should be 2 rounds of combat and you're done. So meaning that they're throwing 6 dice back at you, right? For the Reims battle, and you want to be careful because they do have a fort. So the first round of combat, all your combat power is going to be reduced by 1 for every unit that you have. So you're going to throw in 7 infantry, 2 cavalry, 4 light tanks, a medium tank, a bomber, 2 veteran fighters, 3 tactical bombers, and 2 artillery. Now your tactical bombers will increase all your armor. Your artillery will give a +1 to your 2 of your infantry. So they're not really, those units are not going to feel the effect of the fort. They're not going to really get a +1 because they're getting a -1 from the fort. So you should expect 6 hits on the opening round. So you'll probably be looking at 2 rounds of combat. For Oslo, now you have to, before you even do the Oslo battle, you have to move in your entire fleet into Sea Zone 17. There is 2 destroyers and a coastal sub that you have to take care of. So you're going to use this fleet combined with this sub and the sub that's already there. Take this out, and then you're free to offload your transport. Now, when you're conducting this battle, you're definitely overkilling this. So your cruiser and your battleship you actually don't need for the sea battle. Save those for shore bombardment because you have enough subs and destroyers to take care of this. And then use your cruiser and battleship for, and you're looking for the 1 hit. You want this to be 1 round of combat done. And then you just got to worry. The biggest fear that you have here is they're rolling back at you. They're rolling 3 dice because of that fort. So up there, you're going to bring in 2 paratroopers. You start the game with 2. You do have 2 air transports, so not a big deal to get that there. And then your transport, you're going to bring in 1 artillery and an infantry. And the infantry artillery will feel the effect of the fort. But your 2 paratroopers won't. So hopefully with the shore bombardment, that should be 1 round of combat done. And then West Poland, what you're going to bring in there is 5 infantry, 1 artillery, 4 mechs, 3 medium tanks, 2 tactical bombers, and 2 veteran fighters. That should give you an attack power of 68 or 5 hits. So you'll be looking at 2 rounds of combat for that battle. So if you use these units the way I just described, you should be in an excellent position to be in your second impulse to start taking out the cities and the factories that you do need. So let's take a look and see what the map would look like at the end of Impulse 1. Another battle that you want to do at Impulse 1, you want, these subs can't make it because they can only move 1. So you're going to leave the coastal subs here, but the other 5 is going to hit Sea Zone 21. They do have 2 transports and a destroyer, so it's basically 5 subs versus 1 destroyer, so you should kill this pretty easily, and you want to because of the transports. The British do have a bonus tied to transports. All the Commonwealth countries do, actually. So by reducing their transport load, and you're going to hit here and here, so hopefully you're going to knock out 4 transports on the opening round in the Atlantic, and there's a potential of getting another one down by South Africa. So you want to kill as many transports as you can, so the British are forced to replace those. They're slightly expensive, and the more money they're buying in that or spending in that, then there's less money in factories or warships or other units that will make your game more difficult than what it is, right? All right, so let's take a look at the map at the end of Impulse 1. Okay, so at the end of the first impulse, this should be somewhat what you see, or the state of the map, roughly, after the first impulse. You're certainly going to take a lot of hits on your infantry corps. Up in Holland, expect to only have 3 mechs left over. You're going to, out of the 5 infantry, you're bringing to West Poland. Expect to have 1 left. If you're lucky, you'll have 2 or 3. But when I'm running this battle, or these battles, I'm expecting to only have 1. I've played games where I didn't have any to go into Warsaw, which is unfortunate, but this is... And then up in Oslo, I'm hoping to have 3 units left of the 4 that I bring. So this should be the state of the map at this point. Now, this destroyer over here, you can't actually use this on any of your first turn because this destroyer belongs to Finland. So you're not going to get that until you activate Finland, right? And at that point, now there is also a Russian destroyer. So you want to keep this in C-Zone 20, and you'll see in a second. Or you can bring it over to 19. Because C-Zone 19 and 20, even Russia's allowed to attack those C-Zones before you're at war with Germany, because those C-Zones are considered belong to Finland, and Finland and the Soviet Union are at war, and they can fight each other as much as they want within Finland before going to war with Germany. So that's why you want to use Finland as a distraction. But you want that destroyer. You're going to need that transport to activate Finland, and you need that Finnish destroyer to protect your transport. All right, so this is, a good representation of what your map should look like over in C-Zone 21. Expect to have the 5 subs you went in with. I'm expecting to have 4 left. Anything less than 4, very unlucky. If you have all 5, very lucky. But you should expect around 4. These coastal subs, they're too far away to actually do anything. So keep them there, and you're going to want that in the battle for C-Zone 23. Because they only move 1 space at a time. Now, these ships up here belong to Norway. You got 2 coastal battleships, coastal sub, and a destroyer. At this point, once Oslo falls, that's their capital, you're going to roll for these ships. Okay? And the rolling for ships that are not French, basically, you're going to roll a 6-sided dice for each ship. On a 1 or 2, they go German. On a 3, 4, they get scuttled. And on a 5, 6, they go join the United Kingdom. So in this situation for these 4 ships, you want to roll 1s and 2s. 3s and 4s, okay, great. But you want to pick up these ships to fight on your side. Now, the rules for ships that you join one particular faction, they have to go to the nearest ports. Okay? So for the United Kingdom, that'll be C-Zone 14. That's where they would go. For the Germans, they would end up C-Zone 16. Because that's the closest port. Or you could bring them over to 18. So 1, 2, 1, 2. You can bring them to any one you want. It's really up to yourself. I would recommend 16, because then you can help out in the fighting. So we'll roll for those. And that varies. There's no way to really predict this, because it is a die roll. So worst case scenario is that all 4 join the British and end up in C-Zone 14. At that case, you might want to call off that attack, or bring in some air support, which would cause modification to your second impulse attacks. Because after the end of the first impulse, you're going to bring your entire air force into Western Germany. Yeah, so if they do go all British, that's unfortunate. Typically, it's what I find the average is 1 joins the British, 1 ship joins the Germans, and 2 get scuttled. That's typically how that would play out. But with a die roll, it's up to chance, so you really don't know. All right, so now once all that's done, then you're going to place all your new units, and I would recommend them going into Western Germany. You just bought 10 new units. Western Germany has a production facility, has a major factory, so it can produce all 10. And this is going to be the best spot because most of your targets from Western Germany from this point in France are going to be 2 spaces away. So you need that. Like if you put them in Stettin, then the only spot they really can fight now is in Warsaw. Berlin is too far away for anything, so just put everything in Western Germany. You should be good to go. Your entire air force is there already. You moved everything out except for 1 infantry, and you're going to need that for the Denmark battle. But before that, before we place new units, the non-combat phase. This is just as important to move these units as it is for all your combat. So everything left up in Germany hasn't moved yet. Basically, you're just going to bring everything to Austria, and this is going to set up your battle for Yugoslavia. But even you're going to take 1 guy from Czechoslovakia, and you're going to bring him down to activate Hungary. Okay? Under the old version, you can use a mech and activate Hungary, Romania right away, but under this rule set, anytime you activate a nation that has a production facility, it ends your movement. So just bring in a unit that can only move 1 anyways. And you're going to need that mech to activate Bulgaria after the Yugoslavia battle. So you should have 3 infantry left in Czechoslovakia. Bring that down. Bring your mech down. You want to leave behind a medium tank in Stettin because you don't need it in Western Poland. It's just overkill at that point, but you do want some kind of armor presence in Yugoslavia just to give you those extra hits. You're going to bring down your cavalry from Berlin because you really don't need anywhere else, and you want as much units as you possibly can to get Yugoslavia. For the size of their nation, they do have a decent army. So you want to end this battle as fast as you can. So you want as many units as you can. And that cavalry unit is not really going to help you out in Reims. Yeah, it's an extra dice to throw at the French, but it's really not needed. Up in Berlin, you have 6 infantry. So 3 of them, you're going to walk over to Western Germany. And you're going to need those guys there. The other 3 you're going to use via train. And you're going to bring that down to Austria as well. Okay, so you have a nice little force set up to go into Yugoslavia and hopefully take that out. So now you'll place your new units. I recommend Western Germany. And then from here, you're going to go into your second round of combat. So the place that you're going to attack is, depending on what happened with those ships in Sea Zone 7, make an attack into 14. In the 23, you want those sea zones cleared. You should be able to have no trouble. And this is where you're kind of exposing your German Navy to a British counterattack. There's a bunch of French vessels here. If these all go British, then you can, your Navy's definitely gone. The British do have a number of fighters, bombers that can throw out your Navy, and your battleship is probably weakened due to the fight here. So you're probably not, don't expect to have your German Navy in round 2. If for some reason they ignored you in 14 and they put everything in the 23 to kill your subs, great. Then take advantage of it. Get them back to Sea Zone 18 as fast as you can to protect your Navy, because you'll need that past round 6. Once you re-engage the Battle of the Atlantic. Okay, so the place that you're going to attack now in Impulse 2, Normandy, Denmark, Paris, Warsaw, Yugoslavia, Narvik. And then, of course, your non-combat. So let's take a look at the map, the state of the map after the second impulse. Okay, so after the end of the second round of combat, or your Impulse 2, this should be roughly what the map looks like. And all right, so a realistic outcome after the second impulse attack should look something like this. You've accomplished all your goals, captured all the territories that you could. That's within range of your starting position. You took care of the British Navy. In Sea Zone 23, you're typically going in with 4 subs, 2 coastal subs. Hopefully, if everything in 21 went your way, you didn't lose anything there, so you're going with 5 subs, 2 coastal. But you should expect at the end of that battle to have only 2 subs left. Sometimes only 1. 2 is about average. If you're lucky, you'll probably have 3 or 4 left. Unlucky, you'll only have 1 left. Up in 14, again, this battle, it all hinges on what happens with the fleet that's from Norway. If they join the British, join you. But this should be typically what it probably the end result. Your battleship has 2 points of damage. All your subs are gone, so you'll more likely end with 2 destroyers, a cruiser, and a full damaged battleship. Up in Oslo, Narvak, you brought in everything that you could from Oslo in the Narvak to kill that last infantry. This territory is vital. Obviously, you went into Warsaw. You took out Paris. By taking out Paris, you also collect $20 from the French of their starting income, so it's a $20 boost. So that's where the richest you'll ever be up until turn 6 is at the end of turn 1. You went into Normandy with new units that you just purchased, plus units that you already had on the map from the first impulse. Now, you don't have to take out Normandy. You can leave that to the rolls of the French after the fall of Paris. All the remaining French territories left on the map, they all get rolled for to determine which faction that they join, either the Allies or the Axis. But I like to take out Normandy because you're already rolling for quite a few territories. So the least that you have to roll for, the better. Then you're guaranteed to take Normandy. You're not leaving it to a chance. And the units that you bring in the Normandy are not really needed in Paris. You're already bringing enough material in to take that out. So I like to go into Normandy, but you don't have to. Yugoslavia, certainly take that out, is worth $4, and it's part of that condition. Yugoslavia and Greece need to be under Axis control to be able to move the units that you start with here. You don't want to leave that to turn 2 and 3 before you're able to move those, because everything got to be bulked up in Romania for turn 4. Now, once you conduct all your combat, it's vital that in Reims, you leave 2 units behind before you do that battle in Paris. I like to leave the 2 cavalry behind. Doesn't really matter. You could be 1 infantry, 1 cavalry, whatever. But the battle in Paris, whatever infantry you bring in, it's probably going to be killed. So if you leave an infantry behind, then you bring your cavalry into Paris, then you're taking, more likely you're going to lose that cavalry. So why lose a $4 unit when you can only lose a 3? Cavalry actually, their stats are not that great, but they can blitz like tanks, unlike mechs. So they're pretty decent unit. But leave 2 behind, because in order to get one of your bonuses, there's 7 territories on the map, you need to have at least 1 ground unit in, and Reims is one of them. Bordeaux is also another one. Now, Bordeaux, there's no way to actually get to it to capture it, so you have to leave it for a die roll. And you want a unit, if it goes Vichy, if it goes your way, then on the non-combat phase, one of the cavalry that you leave in Reims can easily move into here on the non-combat phase, and then that's how you'll collect your third $5 bonus. If this goes UK or Free French, then you're not going to collect it. And then you just got 2 units up in Reims. But if it goes Vichy, then you can take one of these in the non-combat phase and collect your $5 bonus. Same thing in Austria. Once you stacked everything up on the non-combat phase to fight in the second impulse into Yugoslavia. Again, same concept as here. Leave one unit behind, and the unit you leave behind has to be able to move 2 spaces. So I like to leave the mech behind. And then in the non-combat phase, you're going to take your mech, go through Yugoslavia, movement 1, and then activate Bulgaria. So this is how you're going to activate all 3 of these countries on the first round, by doing this. If you don't do this, if you don't leave a unit behind, you can't activate Bulgaria until turn 2, which you're kind of gypping yourself $2. So you want as much income as you can, as fast as you can. And then if you don't do it until turn 2, then you can't use that factory to produce new units. It's not a big deal, but does set you back slightly. So why even wait till turn 2? Activate it now on turn 1. You have the means, and you don't really need that mech in the Yugoslavia battle. You're expecting 3 to 4 hits, and this is what you should have left at the end of that battle. You still got your armor, your cavalry, you still got a little bit of infantry left. And then you can bring in some air force if you feel like the ground forces that are not good enough. Like, I normally bring in 2 TAC bombers and 2 fighters. But what I do in my air force all depends on what happens with this fleet. But if this goes the average 1-1 to get destroyed, then I'm going to bring in 4 planes here. Now, there is a risk to your planes because there is an AA gun, so pretty average, you'll lose 1 tactical bomber. I don't bring in, or very rarely will I bring in fighters into Paris or Warsaw because of those AA guns. I want to preserve my air force because my purchases for the next 5 turns are going to be all army, so I'm going to want those planes, and I don't want to be spending money that could be buying infantry on to replace my tactical bombers. But typically expect to lose 1 tactical bomber. Certainly don't take it on your fighters, because you can't replace your veteran fighters. And the only other fighters that you'll pick up throughout the game is in Romania and Helsinki, but you can't use those until turn 2. So in the battle in the Normandy, what you're bringing in is 2 mechs and artillery, maybe a tactical bomber. That will guarantee the kill. There's only 1 infantry there. In Denmark, the guy we left behind at the end of the first impulse, you're going to bring that up. A surviving mech from Holland and the artillery that you just purchased, certainly can easily take out Denmark. Everything from Reims and the 4 tanks that you just purchased will go into Paris, easily wipe that out. Typically, you'll be left with this. You still got all your armor that you just bought. You're starting light tanks. Sometimes you'll be left with artillery. Sometimes you won't. Any infantry you bring in are definitely not going to survive unless the French are just having terrible rolls. But typically, expect to still have all your tanks. And then from there, all these tanks, they're going to head straight for Romania. You got 2 turns to get there. You can easily get there. You just go through. If this depends on what happens here, your path will be through Italy down to Yugoslavia. If not, then you'll have to. If this goes British, then the Italians are responsible for clearing this out for you to make that path, so you can get to Romania by turn 3 for the assault on turn 4. No. So, so once Paris falls, then you're going to roll for the rest of the French territories. Now, these territories that you roll for, you're also going to roll for all the ships. This is a Yugoslavia vessel, so this won't have the Vichy roll incorporated into it. So it's either going to go sank, go German, or go Allied. The French ships, so which is in C zone 24, 37, 38, 45. Now you're going to roll for the French. You're going to roll for the ships last because you need to see where the land territories go. So for the land on 1 to 3 on a 6-sided die, we'll go Axis, so Vichy France. On a 4 to 6, they'll go Free French, which will then align with the Commonwealth, the Commonwealth. So basically, the Free French, they'll move and attack and do everything along with the Commonwealth. The Vichy units will be frozen. They won't be able to move. They'll defend themselves, but they won't be able to be moved throughout territory. They won't be able to attack. So, out of all the French territories, the ones you care about the most, absolute most, is Bordeaux and Marseille. Bordeaux, because it's linked into a $5 bonus, and you want that extra income. So if this goes Vichy, then on the non-combat phase, you're going to take one of your cavalry that you left behind in Reims and move it down, and then boom, there you go. Now you have your bonus. Marseille, because you want that to go Vichy, because, well, first is worth $3. So you want the income. But more importantly than that, you want the Italians' attention on Greece. If this goes UK, then the Italians have to take this out before Greece. So that means they're not coming in here till turn 2, which then hinders your ability to move your starting Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary forces around. It's not the end of the world. It's not that big a deal like it is, but it's not. There's ways around it. But the priority for Italy, if this goes UK, Marseille. If this goes Vichy France, then their priority is Greece. Another reason why you want this to go Vichy or Axis is because of this port. Now, when you're rolling through these ships down here, if this is Allied and these ships roll Allied, then they're in Sea Zone 37. Because they have to go to the closest port, which this would be, if this is Allied. Then that puts a lot of pressure on the Italian Navy, and they already got a lot of pressure because there's going to be a sizable Commonwealth fleet in Sea Zone 47. You don't want to give them a second fleet to have to fight. So you want this to go Vichy. If this is Vichy and any of these ships go Allied, then they're probably going to end up in Sea Zone 35, as this then will become the closest port. And then that's outside of the Mediterranean. And another job the Italians are going to have to do is take out Gibraltar, which they should do, as fast as they can, which will close any new ships coming into the Mediterranean to help the Italians, because they only want to focus on one area of the Mediterranean. They want all this to be free and clear, close this, and then they don't have to worry about any new ships coming from this end. They only got to worry about it from here. So that's the reason why Marseille is vital. It goes Vichy France. Outside of these two territories, the next ones you care about are these three. And the reason why you care about these, yes, there's a port there, so the Italians can use that port to repair their battleship if it's in a fight, or for the movement, extra movement that it does provide. More importantly, these infantry are not normal infantry. They actually defend at one higher than the normal infantry. So the French legionnaires. So that's their special infantry unit. If they're Vichy, they can't move, but you don't really care if they can move or not. What you care about is their defense capability. So if the Americans do happen to, once they join the war, and if they're going for a Germany first strategy, they're probably going to start landing units into Africa to help the British clear out the Italians. And if these are all on the Axis, then it'll slow them down. If these go Allied, and the Allied French can move and attack, then you're going to quickly see these guys stack up here, and then the Italians are going to have a two-front war down in Africa, and you don't want that. You want the Italians, their focus should be on Cairo. And if these are Allied, then that's going to draw their focus away from Cairo, making the Italians' job a lot harder, making the Germans' job a lot harder, and that taking out Cairo is hard enough as it is. So you do care about these. It also generates $3 for the Germans. Outside of that, the rest of the French territories, the Germans and the Italians don't care about. Rio de Janeiro, Syria, yes, they're worth $1 each. But Syria, you're probably, if that goes, Vichy, you're not going to hold on to it for very long. So don't care about that. Over on the Japanese side, the two French territories, Saigon and French Indochina, the Japanese vitally do care about that, but from the German point of view, they don't. It's too far away, and it's not going to matter to them. So these five are the ones you care about the most. The rest are, okay, great. If they go Axis, fantastic. If not, whatever. And then once you figure out what territories aligns with what side, then you'll roll for the ships. So I would recommend roll these first. The British do have a port in London. The Germans have a port in Normandy. So whatever side these ships align on, they're not going to move. They're going to stay in Sea Zone 24. That's provided that you attack in Normandy, guarantee that it's on the Axis side. So these ships will move. It just depends on where these territories align. And this one here is Yugoslavian. So the roll for that will be 1 to 2 German, 3 to 4 scuttled, 5 to 6 UK. If it goes German, it has to go to the closest port, which would be the Italian port, so it'll just end up here if it's German. If it goes UK, it'll end up down in 47. And if it's scuttled, then it's off of that. All right, so at the rest of your non-combat phase, like I said, you're going to take this mech here that didn't go in this battle. If you brought it in, you can't do this. It's vital that you leave it behind. Then it's going to come and activate Bulgaria. The infantry that activated Hungary is now going to come down to Romania. Activate that. Good to go. We already talked about Brodor. And then the transport you're going to leave behind. You can bring it in the Sea Zone 19. Oh, that can't move. So bring in Sea Zone 19, Sea Zone 20, doesn't matter. You're going to bring in an infantry from Western Germany. And then you're going to drop him off and activate him. W on camera, sorry. So then that's how you're going to get Finland. So you're going to activate all 4 of your allies by following this method. And you do want some kind of presence, ground forces, because once you move all your planes to put them in whatever battles that you want, they're all going to go back to Western Germany. Right? Unless you brought them down to Yugoslavia, then they can't make it back to Western Germany, so they'll end up in, Czechoslovakia, Austria, wherever. But I like to keep most of my Air Force in Western Germany from this point up until, mid-game. Because what this does, it dead zones the North Sea, so all these sea zones. The British won't come into here because your Air Force will immediately attack it. And once you take out these 2 British navies, they're not going to be strong enough to really put a big presence here. And if they build here from these 2 factories that they have, you're just going to immediately attack it. So that dead zones this. It also, if these battles here didn't go your way, or if this transport goes UK, then they're not going to land in Western Germany because they have 2 infantry, and you have your entire Air Force to help defend. So the best case scenario, they have no transports to even attempt that, or they may have 1 or 2. Which then they would have to bring in their Air Force to help support a landing of 2 to 4 units, and you're going to have 2 infantry in hopefully all your Air Force and an AA gun to fight them off. The British are not going to risk their Air Force for that, or they shouldn't. So by doing that, that should guarantee that there's no attempt. But best case scenario, that you don't even have a transport to even make that attempt. Your last move on your non-combat phase, the airborne that you bought, you're just going to land that up in Oslo to have a ground presence in that territory. At this point, that's all your combat, non-combat moves. You got nothing else to do. You can't move anything else. So now it's collect income. Now, at this point, so if you follow the strategy, the maximum income that you can possibly get is $99. That is provided that the 7 territories in the European French side all go Vichy. Now, you can't guarantee that because it's a die roll. So you got your 1 in Syria, you got your 4 French territories in Africa, and both of these. They'll all have to go Vichy to collect that 99. So I typically leave what happens on the German turn is based off how much income I'll generate. If I generate 90, because a lot of these French territories went allied, then that's good enough. It's not the best, good enough. But I like to be able to collect 95. So if I'm collecting 95, is meaning probably Bordeaux and Marseille both went Vichy, which is the ones that I care about absolutely the most, and all the African and Syria probably went allied. If I'm collecting 95, great. So then I can afford all the 3 heavy artillery, the 5 infantry, the SS infantry, the SS mechs, and the 2 Mark 7s, and still have $30 odd left to buy whatever I want. So that's my benchmark. If I'm collecting 95, great. I would consider that a very successful turn. Anything below 90, not a good turn, and you probably had a lot of bad luck with the die rolls, because 7 territories with a die roll, and you're banking on a die roll for these ships, for all these French vessels. So there is a lot of luck involved in that. But these territories you just can't get to. They're too far away. I guess you could split up the forces from Reims and attack Marseille. That would guarantee you that this goes German. These forces would be gone. But anything you bring down here, then that's less that you're going to have into Paris. And Paris needs to be a guaranteed kill. Like, you can't mess around with not capturing Paris. But if you want to press your luck, you can split these forces up in Reims with the newly acquired units, the 4 armor and 2 tank destroyers, and attack that. So that means only Bordeaux is going to get roll for. Could take that chance, but I normally leave these to a die roll. But if you're collecting 95, you're good to go. Now, and then from that point, from turn 2 and turn 3, you'll be collecting $75. And then those 2 turns, you should have nothing to do, no attacks to make. You should have, only thing you'll have to do in turn 2 and 3 is buy new units and get everything to this Romania as fast as you can. Leave some kind of presence up in Warsaw. You don't want to completely clear this out, because once you declare war on the Soviet Union, you do need units in position to take out Baltic states and East Poland, but the bulk of your force should be in Romania. And then up in Finland, all you're going to do here is stack up in Viipuri and wait for the Russians to attack you. If they don't, once you declare war, then all these units are going to make an attempt into Leningrad. And then part of the collect income, you'll have opportunity to collect, out of all your national objectives, you have 6 that you can collect from. You're only going to be able to collect from 3, because one has to do with the Soviet Union cities, another one has to do with Cairo, and then the third one has to do with the Middle East, and there's absolutely no chance you're collecting any of that after the end of turn 1. So the ones you have the opportunity to get is you'll collect 5 when you're not at war with the Soviet Union, so of course you're going to get that. You'll collect 5 if you own, not have a presence in, you just need to have your control marker on, Denmark, Oslo, Narvik, and Sweden is under either neutral or Axis controlled. You'll have $5 from that. There is a chance on turn 6 onward that you can flip Sweden over to fight on your side, so they won't be neutral anymore. They'll actually declare war on the Allies. And then the $5, and this is where Bordeaux comes into play. That's why you want to keep a guy behind in Reims to be able to move in there if it does go Vichy. You need to have 1 ground unit in Bordeaux, Normandy, Reims, Holland, Denmark, and Western Germany, and Oslo. So that's why you want that guy up there. So if you have at least 1 ground unit in all those 7 territories, for the Atlantic Wall, you'll collect another 5. So that is pretty much it for Germany's strategy updated video. If you have any questions, certainly ask away. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. If you do this correctly, you'll probably end up with anywhere between 95 and 99. 99 is the maximum that you could possibly collect, and then you'll obviously use that to build up and go into the Soviet Union. I like to go into turn 4, capture Moscow by turn 6, and then that should be the bulk of the Russian army. They'll reactivate their capital or move their capital to Novosibirsk. At that point, they should be severely weakened. And in these you're just going to go straight for Moscow, turn 4 to turn 6. And then your strategy should shift once Moscow's done. Turn 7 and 8, you'll clean up the rest of the territories. So by the end of turn 8, all this should be under your control. And then turn 6 onward, turn 6 and 7, you should probably build up again to declare war on Turkey, to help get into the Middle East. Because then by that time, the Italians should have a big sizable force. The British will have a sizable force. So basically, these two powers here are going to stalemate each other. And then you want the Germans to come in to break that stalemate, to take out Cairo. And then also collect this to get another bonus. These are worth 5 plus the bonus. That's $10. You do want Turkey if you're following the most up-to-date rule set, because Turkey, with the certain objectives that the Axis need to meet to win the game, to collect points at the end of the game to determine the winner. Turkey's tied into 3 of them, so you want Turkey. But if you're not following that and you're just using victory cities, then you don't have to worry about Turkey at all. And you want Moscow on turn 6, and you probably won't have Stalingrad at the end of turn 6 because you're making that the priority. Leningrad and these 2 should be under your control. Then you can activate Sweden and Spain. I would recommend Spain getting activated by the Italians because of the fleet here. It'll boost up their fleet. It also gives you a decent army. And then Sweden get activated by Germany because Italy's too far away. And then from here, Sweden does give you a sizable navy because you're going to have to rebuild your navy from scratch. And this gives you a little bit of leg up. And then the money you collect from Russia, invest that into subs, and then come out into the Atlantic to challenge the British and the Americans. And then re-engage that Battle of the Atlantic because you want the Allied to be focused on warships and not transports and army units, so they're not making an attempt to land in Paris. So that should be the strategy from turn 2 onward, right? All right, so that is it for this. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Other than that, thank you for watching. Have a great day.